The humiliation started the moment I walked through those glass doors. My name is David Harrison, and for the past 3 months, I've been driving executives to their high-powered meetings in downtown Chicago. What they don't know, what nobody knows, is that I own the very building where they conduct their most important business deals. But today, that secret almost destroyed everything I've worked for. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. I had just dropped off Mrs. Richardson, the vice president of Hartwell Industries, at the entrance of the Metropolitan Business Center. As usual, she barely acknowledged my existence, treating me like I was invisible furniture that happened to drive a car. "Same time tomorrow, driver," she said without even looking at me, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she disappeared into the elevator. I should have driven away. I should have minded my own business. But something made me park the car and walk into the lobby. My lobby, though nobody there knew it. The scene I walked into made my blood boil. 3 security guards were surrounding an elderly janitor named Roberto, a man I'd specifically hired because he reminded me of my late grandfather. Roberto was trembling, his weathered hands shaking as he tried to explain something in broken English. "Please, sir, I know steal nothing," Roberto was saying, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is mistake, big mistake." The head security guard, a burly man named Thompson, was holding up a gold watch. "This was found in your cleaning cart, old man. This belongs to Mr. Peterson from the 20th floor. You're going to jail." My heart sank. I knew Roberto. He was one of the most honest people I'd ever met. He sent most of his paycheck back to his family in Guatemala and lived in a tiny apartment just to make ends meet. There was no way he would steal anything. "There has to be an explanation," I found myself saying, stepping forward. "Roberto wouldn't." "And who the hell are you?" Thompson turned his cold stare toward me. He looked me up and down, taking in my simple black suit and driver's cap. "Nobody asked for your opinion, chauffeur." The word hit me like a slap. Not that there's anything wrong with being a driver. It's honest work. But the way he said it, with such contempt, such dismissal, made something inside me snap. "I'm just saying that maybe you should investigate before you—" "You're just the driver," Thompson interrupted, his voice getting louder. "You don't belong here. This is a high-class establishment, not some street corner where you pick up your fares." By now, a small crowd had gathered. I recognized some of the faces, executives I'd driven, business people who worked in my building. But none of them knew who I really was. To them, I was exactly what Thompson said. Just the driver. Mrs. Richardson appeared from the elevator, having forgotten something in the car. When she saw the commotion, she walked over with that same dismissive attitude she always had. "What's going on here?" she asked Thompson, completely ignoring me even though I'd been driving her around for months. "Nothing important, ma'am," Thompson replied. "Just caught this janitor stealing, and this driver here is trying to interfere with building security." Mrs. Richardson finally looked at me, and I saw the moment of recognition in her eyes. But instead of defending me or showing any kind of human decency, she actually smiled. "Oh, him," she said with a laugh that cut right through me. "He's nobody special, just my driver. Probably doesn't even have a high school diploma." The crowd chuckled. Actually chuckled. These people I'd been helping, driving around the city, making their lives easier, they were laughing at me. "Listen, driver," Thompson said, puffing out his chest. "This is way above your pay grade. Why don't you go back to your car and wait for your boss like a good little servant?" Roberto looked at me with desperate eyes, and I could see he was about to break down completely. This kind, gentle man who cleaned these offices every night, who took pride in his work, who never bothered anyone. He was being humiliated, and there was nothing I could do to help him without revealing my secret. But the worst part wasn't Thompson's arrogance or Mrs. Richardson's cruelty. It was the way everyone else just stood there, watching this injustice unfold like it was entertainment. These were supposed to be successful, educated people, and they were treating 2 human beings like garbage. "You know what your problem is, driver?" Thompson continued, clearly enjoying his power trip. "You people think you can just walk into places like this and belong, but you don't. This building is for important people, people who matter. You're just here to serve them." My hands were clenched into fists at my sides. Every fiber of my being wanted to tell them exactly who I was, to watch their faces change when they realized they were standing in my building, humiliating my employee, disrespecting the very person who signed their paychecks. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because what they didn't know was that today was special. Today, the new brass nameplate was being installed outside, the one that would finally reveal to everyone exactly who owned the Metropolitan Business Center. And in about 10 minutes, their whole world was about to turn upside down. The moment I had been dreading and anticipating was about to arrive. As Thompson continued his power display, berating Roberto and making sure everyone knew their place in his little hierarchy, I heard something that made my heart race. The sound of power tools coming from outside the building. Through the massive glass windows of the lobby, I could see the installation crew setting up their equipment. They were preparing to mount the new ownership plaque that would bear my name, David Harrison, owner and CEO of Harrison Properties. For 3 years, I had kept my identity secret. 3 years of watching from the shadows, learning about my tenants, understanding how they really treated people when they thought no one important was watching. What I had discovered disgusted me more than I ever imagined it would. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly to Thompson, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Roberto is innocent." Thompson's face turned red with anger. "Are you questioning my authority, driver? Do you have any idea who I am? I've been head of security here for 8 years. I know how to handle thieves and troublemakers." 8 years. 8 years of him abusing his position. And I never knew because I trusted the management company to handle staffing. But seeing him now, watching how he treated Roberto, how he treated me, I realized I had been incredibly naive. "Maybe the watch fell into his cart by accident," I suggested, trying one more time to reason with him. "Maybe Mr. Peterson dropped it and—" "Shut up!" Thompson shouted, loud enough that his voice echoed through the marble lobby. "I am sick and tired of you running your mouth. Security!" 2 more guards appeared from seemingly nowhere. I recognized them, Jake Morrison and Paul Chen. I had personally approved their hiring applications 2 years ago, impressed by their military backgrounds and stellar references. Now they were walking toward me like I was some kind of criminal. "Escort this driver out of the building," Thompson ordered. "And make sure he understands he's not welcome back." Mrs. Richardson was practically glowing with satisfaction. Finally. Some people just don't know their place. That phrase, "know their place," hit me harder than any physical blow could have. Because I did know my place. My place was at the top of the building directory in the penthouse office that overlooked the entire city. My place was signing the checks that paid their salaries, approving the budgets that kept their businesses running. But more importantly, my place was standing up for people like Roberto, who couldn't defend themselves against bullies like Thompson. Jake Morrison, one of the security guards I had personally hired, grabbed my arm. "Come on, buddy. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." The irony was suffocating. This man, whose family I had helped when his daughter needed surgery by quietly arranging for his health insurance to cover the experimental treatment, he was about to throw me out of my own building. "Jake," I said quietly, looking directly into his eyes, "you know this isn't right." For just a moment I saw doubt flicker across his face. Jake was a good man, I knew that. But he was also following orders from his supervisor, and in his world, that mattered more than his conscience. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I have to do my job." As they started to escort me toward the door, I heard the drilling outside get louder. The installation crew was mounting the bracket for the nameplate. In less than 5 minutes, my name would be permanently displayed outside this building for everyone to see. "This is exactly why we have security," Mrs. Richardson announced to the crowd, her voice dripping with superiority. "To keep the riffraff out. This building is for serious business people, not for drivers who think they can waltz in here and tell us how to run things." The crowd murmured their agreement. I recognized Dr. Patricia Wells, a psychiatrist who rented office space on the 15th floor. I had personally approved a rent reduction for her when she was starting her practice. Now she was nodding along with Mrs. Richardson's cruel words. There was Marcus Thompson, no relation to the security chief, who ran a consulting firm on the 12th floor. Just last month, I had approved building improvements specifically requested by his company. He was looking at me like I was something he'd scrape off his shoe. "Please," Roberto's voice cut through the crowd's murmuring. The elderly janitor was still holding his hands up, still trying to explain his innocence. "I have familia, need job, please no call police." "Should have thought of that before you decided to steal," Thompson Sr. replied coldly. "Paul, call the cops. Let's get this thief out of here too." That was it. That was the moment I almost broke my own rule and revealed everything. Watching this kind, hard-working man beg for mercy while surrounded by people who had never known a day of real struggle in their lives. It was more than I could take, but I forced myself to wait. Because in about 2 minutes, the nameplate would be in place, and everything would change. The drilling outside stopped. Through the glass, I could see the crew leader examining the newly mounted bracket, making sure it was level and secure. He gave a thumbs up to his partner, who began unpacking the brass nameplate from its protective wrapping. My nameplate? "You know what?" Thompson was saying, clearly enjoying his moment of authority. "I think we should ban this driver from the entire block. People like him give the neighborhood a bad reputation. The crowd laughed again. Actually laughed at the idea of banning me from my own property. Mrs. Richardson checked her expensive watch. Well, this has been entertaining, but I have a conference call with the building's owner in 10 minutes. Some of us have real work to do. If only she knew. The moment of truth arrived with the sound of drilling stopping outside. As Jake and Paul continued to escort me toward the exit, I could see the installation crew through the glass doors. They were carefully lifting the brass nameplate, preparing to mount it in place. The morning sun caught the polished surface, and I could almost make out the letters of my name from where I stood. "Move it along, driver," Thompson barked. "Show's over." But the show was just beginning. Mrs. Richardson was checking her phone, probably preparing for her conference call with me, not knowing that the person she was about to speak with was standing right in front of her, being treated like a criminal. "You know what I love about this building," she said to Dr. Wells, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The owner really knows how to maintain standards. He doesn't let just anyone walk in here thinking they belong." The crowd chuckled again at her words. If they only knew how wrong they were about to be proven. Through the glass, I watched as the crew leader positioned the nameplate against the mounting bracket. This was it. In 30 seconds, everyone would see David Harrison, owner and CEO Harrison Properties, displayed prominently at the entrance of the Metropolitan Business Center. "Wait," Roberto said suddenly, his voice cracking with desperation. "Please, Mr. Security Man, check cameras. Check cameras, please. I know steal nothing." Thompson rolled his eyes. "The cameras will show exactly what I said they'd show. You taking this watch." But something in Roberto's voice made me pause. There was a certainty there, a confidence that hadn't been there before. And suddenly I realized what had probably happened. "Thompson," I said, stopping in my tracks despite Jake's attempt to keep me moving. "When was the last time you actually reviewed the security footage?" "What's it to you, driver?" Thompson snapped. "I don't have to explain my procedures to someone like you." "Because," I continued, my voice getting stronger, "if you had actually looked at the footage, you'd know that Roberto couldn't have stolen that watch." The crowd was starting to pay attention now. Even Mrs. Richardson looked up from her phone. "And why's that?" Thompson asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Because Roberto doesn't clean the 20th floor," I replied. "He's been assigned to floors 1 through 10 for the past 6 months. Mr. Peterson's office is on 20. Roberto's never been up there." The lobby fell silent. Thompson's face went pale. "How do you know Roberto's cleaning schedule?" Dr. Wells asked, her psychologist training probably picking up on something the others missed. Before I could answer, a young woman in a business suit hurried into the lobby. It was Jennifer Martinez, my building manager, one of the few people who knew my real identity. "Mr. Harrison," she called out, not seeing me in the crowd at first. "Mr. Harrison, the nameplate installation is complete, and I have the documents you requested for." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me standing between 2 security guards, saw the crowd staring, saw Thompson holding a watch like he was conducting some kind of interrogation. "Mr. Harrison," she said again, confused. "What's going on here?" The lobby was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Mrs. Richardson was the first to speak. "Jennifer, there's been some kind of mistake. This man is my driver. His name isn't Harrison." Jennifer looked at Mrs. Richardson like she'd lost her mind. "Ma'am, this is David Harrison. He owns this building. He owns the entire Harrison Properties portfolio." I watched as the color drained from every face in that lobby. Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The watch slipped from his fingers and clattered on the marble floor. Mrs. Richardson's phone fell from her hand. Dr. Wells actually took a step backward. Jake and Paul immediately released my arms, both of them looking like they wanted to disappear into the floor. "That's impossible," Thompson finally managed to whisper. He's just a driver." "No," I said, my voice calm and steady for the first time all morning. "I am a driver. I drive myself to my properties to check on them personally. I drive executives like Mrs. Richardson because I wanted to understand how my tenants really behave when they think no one important is watching." I turned to face the crowd, making eye contact with each person who had laughed at me, who had dismissed me, who had treated me like I was beneath them. "And what I've learned," I continued, "is absolutely disgusting." Through the glass doors, the brass nameplate gleamed in the morning sun. David Harrison, owner and CEO, was now clearly visible to everyone walking by, and more importantly to everyone inside the lobby who had just spent the last 20 minutes humiliating the very person whose name was on that sign. Mrs. Richardson looked like she was about to be sick. "Mr. Harrison, I had no idea. I mean, I never would have..." "Never would have what?" I interrupted. Never would have treated your driver with basic human dignity? Never would have shown respect to someone you thought was beneath you? Thompson was backing away slowly, probably calculating how quickly he could clear out his office before I fired him. But I wasn't done yet. "Roberto," I said, turning to the elderly janitor who was still standing there in shock. "Come here, please." Roberto approached hesitantly, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Roberto has worked in this building for 2 years," I announced to the crowd. "He sends most of his paycheck to his family in Guatemala. He's never missed a day of work, never had a single complaint against him, and has consistently been praised by every tenant on floors 1 through 10. I picked up the watch from where Thompson had dropped it. "This watch belongs to Mr. Peterson on the 20th floor, a floor Roberto has never cleaned. Which means either Mr. Peterson dropped it somewhere else in the building, or," I looked directly at Thompson, "someone planted it in Roberto's cart to cover up their own theft." The implications hung in the air like a thick fog. Thompson's face went from pale to crimson as the weight of my accusation settled over the lobby. "You can't be serious," he stammered. But his voice lacked the authority it had carried just minutes before. "I would never. I've been loyal to this building for 8 years. Jennifer," I said, not taking my eyes off Thompson, "please call up the security footage from the 20th floor for the past week. I want to see exactly how Mr. Peterson's watch ended up in Roberto's cleaning cart." Jennifer nodded immediately. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. I'll have it pulled up within minutes." The crowd was still standing in stunned silence, everyone trying to process what had just happened. But I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They were all remembering every dismissive comment, every cruel laugh, every moment they had treated me like I was invisible. Mrs. Richardson was the first to try damage control. "Mr. Harrison, please, you have to understand. I had no idea who you were. If you had known, you would have treated me differently," I finished for her. "But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Your respect isn't based on someone's character or humanity. It's based on their bank account." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "For 3 months, Mrs. Richardson, I drove you to meetings, waited for hours in parking garages, helped you with your bags when it was raining. Did I ever once treat you with anything less than complete professionalism?" Her silence was answer enough. "And how did you repay that courtesy?" I continued. "By telling everyone I probably didn't have a high school diploma. By laughing when they called me riffraff. By treating me like I was some kind of servant who didn't deserve basic human dignity." Dr. Wells stepped forward, her psychological training probably telling her to de-escalate the situation. "Mr. Harrison, I think we're all in shock here. Perhaps we could discuss this more privately." "Privately?" I turned to face her. "Like how you privately agreed when Mrs. Richardson said I didn't belong here? Like how you privately nodded when Thompson said people like me should know our place?" Dr. Wells's face flushed with shame. This was a woman who had dedicated her career to helping people. Yet she had stood by and watched as 2 innocent people were humiliated and degraded. "You're a psychiatrist, Dr. Wells," I said. "You understand human behavior better than most. So tell me, what does it say about a person's character when they treat others badly based solely on perceived social status?" She couldn't meet my eyes. Jennifer returned with a tablet in her hands. "Mr. Harrison, I have the security footage queued up. Would you like me to display it on the lobby screen?" "Please do." The large flat-screen TV mounted on the lobby wall flickered to life, showing black and white security footage from the 20th floor. The timestamp showed it was from yesterday evening, after normal business hours. We all watched as the footage showed Thompson entering Mr. Peterson's office with his master key. The timestamp showed he was there for nearly 10 minutes, far longer than any security check would require. When he left the office, something was clearly visible in his hand. "That's impossible," Thompson said desperately. "That footage has been doctored. Someone's trying to frame me." But his voice cracked as he said it, and everyone in the lobby could hear the lie. "Jennifer, please call the police," I said calmly. "Let them know we have evidence of theft and attempted frame-up of an innocent employee." "No, wait!" Thompson pleaded, all his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Please, Mr. Harrison, I can explain. I was going through a divorce. My ex-wife was taking everything. I just needed—" "You needed to steal from a tenant and blame an innocent man who can barely speak English and couldn't defend himself." I cut him off. "You needed to destroy Roberto's life to cover up your own crimes." Roberto, who had been quietly watching everything unfold, finally spoke up. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you for believing in me." His simple words, spoken with such genuine gratitude, hit me harder than any of the cruel comments from the crowd. This man had been minutes away from losing his job, possibly facing jail time, all because Thompson needed a scapegoat. "Roberto," I said, "you'll be receiving a formal apology from building management, a bonus equal to 2 weeks' pay for the distress you've been caused, and if you're interested, I'd like to promote you to head of the custodial staff. You've shown more integrity in one morning than some people show in a lifetime." Roberto's eyes filled with tears. "See, Mr. Harrison. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." I turned back to face the crowd of tenants who were still standing there, probably hoping they could somehow disappear. "Now," I said, "let's talk about lease renewals." The word sent a visible chill through the group. Mrs. Richardson went completely white. "Mr. Harrison, please," she began, but I wasn't finished. "Mrs. Richardson, your lease is up for renewal next month. After what I've witnessed today, I'm not sure this building is the right fit for your company." "You can't be serious," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "My company has been here for 5 years. We've never been late on rent." "Your company has been here for 5 years," I agreed, "during which time you've apparently learned nothing about treating people with respect. Tell me, how do you treat your own employees? Do you laugh at them behind their backs too? Do you dismiss them as nobody special when they're trying to help others?" She had no answer because we both knew the truth. "Dr. Wells," I continued, "your practice is supposed to be about helping people overcome trauma and find their dignity. Yet you stood by and watched as 2 people were stripped of theirs. How exactly does that fit with your Hippocratic oath?" Marcus Thompson from the consulting firm was slowly backing toward the elevator, probably hoping he could escape before I got to him. "Going somewhere, Marcus?" I called out. "We haven't discussed your lease renewal yet either." The elevator doors closed just as he reached them, leaving him trapped in the lobby with the rest of us. But the person I was most disappointed in was Jake Morrison, the security guard who had grabbed my arm. This was a man whose family I had personally helped, whose daughter's life I had potentially saved by ensuring her medical treatment was covered. "Jake," I said quietly, "walk with me." Everyone else stayed frozen in place as Jake and I moved toward the window, where my nameplate was now clearly visible from inside the building. The conversation I was about to have with Jake Morrison would be the hardest one of all. As we stood by the window, away from the others, I could see the weight of realization crushing down on Jake's shoulders. His hands were shaking slightly and he couldn't look me in the eye. 2 years ago, I said quietly, your daughter Emma was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. Do you remember? Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, sir. The experimental surgery she needed wasn't covered by your standard insurance plan. It was going to cost your family everything. Your house, your savings, your future. A tear rolled down Jake's cheek. I remember. And then, mysteriously, your insurance company called and said there had been a policy review, and the surgery would be fully covered after all. Do you remember that phone call, Jake? He nodded, unable to speak. That wasn't your insurance company's sudden change of heart, I continued. That was me. I personally contacted them, personally guaranteed the payment, personally made sure your little girl got the surgery that saved her life. Jake finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears and shame. Oh God. Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I never knew it was you. I didn't want you to know, I said. I don't help people for recognition or gratitude. I help them because it's the right thing to do. Just like you joining the military was the right thing to do. Just like taking this job to provide for your family was the right thing to do. But I grabbed you, he said, his voice breaking. I was about to throw you out of your own building. After everything you did for Emma, for my family. You were following orders, I replied. I understand that. Military training runs deep, and loyalty to your chain of command is important. But Jake, there's a difference between following orders and abandoning your conscience. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What can I do to make this right? How can I ever make this up to you? I put my hand on his shoulder. You can start by remembering this moment. Remember how it felt to realize you were hurting someone who had helped you. And next time you see someone being treated unfairly, you speak up, even if it's your boss giving the orders. Yes, sir, I promise. Good. Now go back to work. But first, help Roberto gather his cleaning supplies. From now on, he's going to need a much bigger office. Jake nodded and walked back toward the group, his head held higher than when we'd started our conversation. I returned to face the remaining crowd, which had grown smaller as some people had tried to quietly slip away during my conversation with Jake. Mrs. Richardson, I said, you mentioned you had a conference call with the building owner. I believe that's me you were supposed to speak with. She looked like she was about to faint. Mr. Harrison, please, can we discuss this privately? I'm sure we can work something out. Work something out? I interrupted. Like a payment plan for basic human decency. An installment program for treating people with respect. The entire lobby was watching now. Word had spread quickly through the building, and people were coming down from their offices to see what was happening. The crowd had tripled in size. Let me tell you what we're going to work out, I continued, my voice carrying to every corner of the marble lobby. Every single person who participated in this morning's humiliation is going to have their lease reviewed, and I don't mean just looking at payment history. I gestured toward Roberto, who was standing proudly next to Jake. This man has more character and integrity than half the people in this room. He was willing to face false accusations with dignity. He asked for justice, not revenge. He continued to show respect even to people who were destroying his life. The crowd was completely silent now. Compare that to the so-called professionals who laughed at someone's pain, who judged people based on their clothes instead of their character, who stood by and watched an innocent man be falsely accused without saying a word. Dr. Wells stepped forward again. Mr. Harrison, what happened here today was wrong. But surely you can understand that people make mistakes under pressure. Pressure? I turned to face her. What pressure, Dr. Wells? The pressure of being asked to show basic human compassion? The pressure of treating a fellow human being with dignity? She had no answer. You know what real pressure looks like? I continued. Real pressure is working 2 jobs to send money to your family in another country. Real pressure is being accused of a crime you didn't commit and not speaking the language well enough to defend yourself. Real pressure is raising a child with a life-threatening medical condition. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. What happened here today wasn't pressure. It was a choice. Each of you chose how to behave when you thought no one important was watching. And your choices revealed exactly who you really are. Mrs. Richardson made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Harrison, I understand you're upset, but my company brings in significant revenue for this building. Surely business considerations. Business considerations? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me share some business considerations with you, Mrs. Richardson. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. Jennifer, could you please bring me the financial records for Hartwell Industries account? Within moments, Jennifer appeared with a tablet displaying the account information. Mrs. Richardson's company pays $42,000 per month in rent, I announced to the crowd. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the lobby. What Mrs. Richardson doesn't know, I continued, is that I donated $60,000 to the Children's Hospital last month alone. I contribute more to charity in 30 days than her company pays in rent. The murmurs stopped. So please don't insult my intelligence by suggesting that keeping toxic tenants is somehow good business. I'd rather have empty offices than offices filled with people who treat others like garbage. Mrs. Richardson's face had gone completely ashen. She knew her lease wouldn't be renewed, and more importantly, she knew that word of this incident would spread throughout the business community. But I wasn't finished yet. However, I said, and everyone leaned forward to hear what was coming next. I believe in second chances. I believe people can change, can learn, can become better versions of themselves. A spark of hope flickered in several faces. So here's what's going to happen. The final chapter of this morning's drama was about to unfold, and everyone knew their futures hung in the balance. I walked to the center of the lobby where everyone could see and hear me clearly. The brass nameplate outside caught the sunlight, casting my name in golden letters across the marble floor. Thompson, I said, turning to the former head of security who was now handcuffed and waiting for the police to arrive. Your employment is terminated immediately. You'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and I'll be personally ensuring that every security company in the city knows exactly why you were fired. Thompson had nothing left to say. His 8 years of authority had crumbled in less than an hour. As for the rest of you, I continued, you each have a choice to make. Mrs. Richardson straightened up, trying to salvage what remained of her dignity. Choice number 1. You can continue being the same people you were this morning. You can keep treating service workers, drivers, custodians, and anyone else you consider beneath you with contempt and disrespect. If you choose this path, your lease will not be renewed, and you'll need to find somewhere else to conduct your business. The color drained from several faces in the crowd. Choice number 2. You can use this as a wake-up call. You can remember how it felt to discover that the person you dismissed and humiliated was someone whose respect you desperately wanted. You can commit to treating every human being with dignity, regardless of their job, their appearance, or their perceived social status. I paused, letting the weight of their decision settle over them. If you choose the second path, I'll not only renew your leases, but I'll reduce your rent by 15% for the next year. Consider it an investment in your character development." Gasps echoed through the lobby. A 15% rent reduction in downtown Chicago was worth tens of thousands of dollars for most of these businesses. Mrs. Richardson was the first to speak. "Mr. Harrison, I choose the second path. What happened today was inexcusable and I want to do better." But I held up my hand. "Words are easy, Mrs. Richardson. Anyone can stand here and say they want to change. I'm interested in actions." I turned to Roberto, who was standing quietly beside Jake, still processing everything that had happened. "Roberto, you're now the head of custodial services for this building. Your first responsibility is to hire and train a team of custodians who will be treated with the same respect as any other employee. Your second responsibility is to report directly to me about how tenants treat your staff." Roberto's eyes widened. "Mr. Harrison, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me make sure no one else ever has to go through what you went through this morning." "Si, sir. Yes, I will." I turned back to the crowd. "Roberto will be my eyes and ears in this building. How you treat him and his team will determine whether your lease gets renewed. It's that simple." Dr. Wells stepped forward. "Mr. Harrison, I'd like to volunteer my services. Free psychological counseling for any building employee who needs it. Starting with sensitivity training for anyone who wants to take the second path you mentioned." I nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of action I'm talking about, Dr. Wells." Marcus Thompson, the consultant who had tried to escape in the elevator, finally found his voice. "Mr. Harrison, my firm specializes in corporate culture and sensitivity training. I'd like to offer our services to any tenant who wants to implement better practices for treating all employees with respect." Another good start, Marcus. One by one, the tenants began offering concrete actions rather than empty apologies. It was fascinating to watch people who had been laughing at me an hour ago now desperately trying to prove their worth. But I saved my most important announcement for last. "There's one more thing," I said, and the lobby fell silent again. "I'm establishing the Roberto Morales Dignity Fund." Roberto looked confused. "Mr. Harrison? It's a scholarship fund for the children of service workers, custodians, drivers, security guards, maintenance staff, kids whose parents work hard but might not be able to afford college tuition." I looked around the room. "Every tenant who chooses the second path and commits to treating all people with dignity will contribute to this fund. Consider it a down payment on your own humanity." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same people who had dismissed me as just a driver were now being asked to contribute to a fund for the children of people they had considered beneath them. "Mrs. Richardson," I said, "since you mentioned that business considerations are important to you, let me share a business lesson I learned from my father." Everyone leaned in to listen. "He told me that you can judge a person's true character by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. People who they think have no power, no influence, no importance." I gestured toward Roberto. "This morning, you all met Roberto when you thought he was powerless. You met me when you thought I was nobody, and you showed us exactly who you really are." Mrs. Richardson was crying now, genuine tears of shame and regret. "But here's the thing about character," I continued. "It's not fixed, it's not permanent. Every day you get to choose who you want to be. Every interaction is a chance to be better than you were the day before." I looked at each face in the crowd, seeing a mixture of shame, hope, and determination. The nameplate outside says I own this building. But what happened in this lobby today showed me something more important. We all own our choices. We all own our actions. And we all own the responsibility to treat every human being with dignity and respect. Roberto stepped forward and, to everyone's surprise, extended his hand to Mrs. Richardson. "Is okay," he said in his gentle, accented English. "We all make mistakes. Important thing is we learn, see?" Mrs. Richardson took his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Roberto. We learn. I'm so sorry for what I said about you, about Mr. Harrison, about everyone." And in that moment, watching a man who had been falsely accused and humiliated offer forgiveness to someone who had laughed at his pain, I realized that Roberto had taught everyone in that lobby something more valuable than any business lesson I could have given them. 6 months later, the Metropolitan Business Center had a waiting list of companies wanting to lease space. Word had spread throughout the business community about the building where the owner cared more about character than credit scores, where service workers were treated with respect, and where every employee, from the CEO to the custodian, was valued as a human being. And Roberto? He hired his nephew from Guatemala as his assistant, enrolled in English classes at the community college, and started each day by walking through the building with his head held high, knowing that his boss had his back. As for me, I kept driving. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. And the most profound truths are revealed when people think nobody important is watching. The brass nameplate still gleams outside the Metropolitan Business Center, but it's not my name that defines the building anymore. It's the character of the people inside it.
If this story touched your heart and made you think, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that miracles can happen when we least expect them. What do you think about what happened to our protagonist? Leave us a comment below telling us if you've ever experienced a similar situation or what you thought of this incredible story. Your support helps us continue bringing these stories that remind us that life can always surprise us. See you in the next video.